If you had to brand your engraving style in 3 words, what would they be?
Big, bright cuts.
Good morning. I'm Molly, and I'd like to welcome you to The Angle, a GRS series highlighting our instructors shaping the 2026 class season. Let's go.
My name's Diane Scalese, and I've been teaching for GRS since 2002, actually. This will be my 25th year.
Awesome.
I generally teach a basic bright cut class, 1 or 2 a year. The bulk of our engraving is done with flat gravers and liners, and it takes some practice to get used to using those tools as compared to a single point. And so it looks really fun, and people say, oh, it's fast and it's easy to make money, but they don't realize the learning curve. I always say that bright cutting is harder to learn but easier to master. Once you get all the learning done, you're good. You can do an enormous amount of different types of work once you've mastered those flats, but you have to take the time to master those flats. So I'll do an intermediate class, which might be more bright cutting or silversmithing. It might be flare cutting, which I do flare cutting using flats and single points. It's a good mixture of bright cutting and single point engraving that's totally new and different. There's very few rules in flare cutting. Anything goes, and it's a ton of fun to flare cut, and it works on any kind of metals that are engravable. It looks as good in steel as it does in silver, and so that's going to be a fun one. I'm going to do a class this year on a aftermarket Glock slide that we are going to flare cut, and the students will get their slide, and it'll come in their toolkit and everything they need, and I'll have the patterns. They're welcome also to explore their own creativity if they like, but I will be there with some patterns for them to use if they prefer. I'm going to do a bracelet class, which is an intermediate class this year. We will do some overlays. I'm hoping to do an edge as well as some decorative ornament on the top of the bracelet, and then we're going to do a bit of sculpting, carving, and more bright cutting.
What advice would you give to somebody just starting off? What's the biggest tip you have for them?
If you're a beginner, focus on which direction you want to go first. If you want to be a bright cutter, focus on that until you get those skills nailed. Or if you think your pathway is towards single point engraving, such as guns and things like that, get a good grip on that too before switching over to bright cutting. That's the biggest problem I see, is someone who's got a little bit of start in the gun engraving world, and then now they're going to do bright cutting, but they really haven't mastered the single point. And so now we tend to get them really confused. Some bright cutting techniques seem counterintuitive to a gun engraver. We do things a little differently. For bright cut engraving, you need a little resistance in your vise. You don't want a vise that turns super freely, because as you reposition your hands in the middle of a cut, it'll throw your cut off. If you're wriggling, things like that, we need our elbows up. We need to be able to move because our cuts are big. And so you don't want to be too tight. You don't want to be too close to your graver. You need to be a little back so you can make those big sweeping cuts. Little things like that are completely different from single point engraving. So decide which way you want to go and get a good basic start in one before switching to the other. Don't try to learn both at the same time.
What do you think the biggest struggle is for someone coming into a basic Western class?
Bright cutting, your cuts are a steady dive. And so you start out super light and you end up wide and also a little deeper. And so with single point, you get into the metal and you maintain that depth. With bright cutting, you need to always add a little depth. And it's not something you really do with your arms. It's more something you think it through. As you think it, your arm does it. It's so subtle, but that's a difficult one, is to learn how to get that gradual depth, practice starting super light and getting wide, as well as flattening out your graver at the same time. So wider and deeper. And then, of course, which corner do you use? The left or the right? So, and it's an easy thing, but it takes repetition to get it down.
How did you know, like, as you were learning, how did you know, like, yes, I've got it? What makes the difference between okay, bright cut and a good bright cut?
A bright cut that has no chatter marks, that's smooth and crisp and perfectly metered out for depth and width. I do remember, though, a pair of spurs we were doing, and I had done what I thought was bright cutting. At the time, I had no one to teach me. And I thought, man, this is good. I've got this. And I look back at it now and I just want to hide. But at the time, I thought I was doing really good. Back then, of course, there was nothing really to compare your work to. No one was teaching. It was hard to find work at all, let alone quality work to study. So it was a slow process till I bet I was 6 years before I felt I actually had a good grip on it. That a student today doesn't require near that much time.
What do you see as the biggest difference between when you started as an engraver and engravers starting off today?
Oh gosh, I bet everybody will say this, the amount of information available. Teaching, YouTubes, helpful people, consistent tools. Being able to get gravers that are pretty much the same every time. And such a variety of gravers. You can get so many different types now that you couldn't get before. And I do have to admit that when it came out, quick change collets, I thought, oh, for crying out loud. Really? Are we that lazy?
And now you love them.
Oh, man, they'll have to rip them out of my hands.
If you could only pick 5 tools to have at your bench, what would you pick?
45 flat, tapered flat, 37 tapered flat. I would have a single point, an 1810 liner, and a 3010 liner, or a 2810 liner. Those would be my 5.
Why specifically tapered and not parallel?
Because you get a much smoother cut. Okay. Trust me on that one.
The way you can angle it?
Well, the way you come around the curve, especially with the undercut, or what I call the leaf cut. If you're going to the left, the right corner of your graver will gouge more easily if you're using parallel flats. Whereas that bit of a taper gives it just a little bit of clearance, or I don't know what you call it. It's not a heel, but it really makes that edge much smoother than a parallel heel will.
What are you most excited about for this year at the training center?
Having you back is such a ton of fun. I'm excited because the mixture of instructors that are able to come and share their skills, and we get to teach with the other instructor, is always fun. I love coming to the classroom. All the equipment we need is there. Everything's ready to go. And of course, if ever we need anything, all we have to do is snap our fingers, and we have what we need for both us and our students. Yes. It's going to be a fun year for all the different classes that are going to be offered, especially fabrication room, all the fine tuning we're doing every year, and we can improve the experience for the students. It's really wonderful to have so many tools at our fingertips.
How have your classes changed from when you first started teaching, like yours specifically, the way that you taught them? How have you adapted your classes over the year?
They're much more knowledgeable about what equipment is out there, what tools are out there. They're much more knowledgeable with their terminology. They're much more ready for class when they arrive because they have a general idea of what's going to happen.
What would you describe your teaching style?
Helicopter. Bright cutting is the kind of thing you have to watch that student and catch little things as they go. And so I don't want them practicing their wriggling for an hour and be holding their tool incorrectly and fighting it for an hour. I want to catch it as quickly as possible. So I do like to go around to each bench and see how they're doing. So I'm constantly monitoring their progress and helping in individual situations, as well as giving them enough time to practice.
When you're flying by the benches or over the benches, what is something that immediately you like, this is off?
The sound, number one. If they're using the graver mock, I can tell by the sound of the machine if they're struggling. There's a way that it's just smooth if it's, so I do listen to that, and I can be up in the instructor's bench and hear the far one on the end, and I hear a noise and I know somebody's in trouble. The other one is the way they hold their arm. Is their elbow up? Is their wrist flat? And I noticed that right away.
What is something that you have not learned yet, or something that a skill that you would like to develop and have not done yet?
That high relief sculpting.
Really?
I'm thinking Alain Lovenberg. I didn't have the opportunity to take his class when he was there as a master. And I wish he would come back again now that my summers are more free. But that's something I'd really like to learn.
What is your biggest challenge in your work now? Is it like, okay, just leave it as it is? Do you have to walk away from something sometimes? Or
when I'm done with a piece, I always walk away from it for a day or two before it goes out to the customer, because I often miss something. And so I need to leave it sit and come back with it with fresh eyes.
Do you have any dream projects lined up, like in your head, where you're
I do. I have 2 or 3 that I absolutely am going to get done this summer. How I can clear my schedule for that, I've got to figure out. But yeah, I've got 2 or 3 that are on my sketchboard that I'm very anxious to. I'm chomping at the bit to get onto.
Is it for a certain client, or are you doing it for yourself?
Mostly for myself.
Okay.
I want to push some skills, and yeah, mostly for myself.
Oh, I can't wait to see them. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Today's episode is sponsored by Quiet Authority, a subscription service for engravers who prefer precision over noise. It includes bright cuts that sparkle, scroll that behaves, and zero tolerance for good enough. Quiet Authority. Cancel anytime. Standards remain permanent. If you had to brand your engraving style in 3 words, what would they be?
Big bright cuts.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess that's the first thing I think of. Is I find that people don't push themselves on enough, making those bright cuts big and bold and not letting the leaf cuts overshadow. Keep that big, beautiful bright cut.
Who are other Western artists that you really look at their work and draw inspiration from them?
I don't know who the engravers are at GIST, but I think that not only do they have beautiful bright cutters, but also they really push design and come up with fresh new ideas and different shapes, different elements. I really enjoyed watching their work evolve. It's been fun to watch what they've done. Clint Orms can have some very interesting designs because he has a slightly different market than, say, GIST. And so I find that interesting.
Do you find that you draw most of your inspiration from gatherings and other makers, or what do you draw inspiration from? Because you experiment quite a bit too, I feel.
I do with a lot of different things, and probably the bulk of it is studying other engravers' work for design elements, but I like architectural elements, and I draw a lot of inspiration looking at old buildings.
Art Deco, that's what almost everyone has said, Art Deco, and I'm like,
yeah. That's kind of a thing, and actually I'm studying a little on that for a project that I am going to be working on. I have been trying to decide how to balance Art Deco and scroll work, so I haven't played with it a lot, but there's elements, especially their florals, very simple, elegant, might be something to try with some flare cutting.
What is something that you wish you could experiment more within the Western market?
I would like to experiment with colored golds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to talk to you about this then, because that's a class I've been wanting to
I think that would be really fun. I want to do more piercing and overlay work. That's a balance with that too, because the more you pierce, now you're into sculpting and single point and beveling and stuff, and you get away from the actual bright cut because there's not a lot of room. So it's always a balance. I never like bright cut to take second fiddle, but sometimes it has to.
What is your favorite project that you have done to date?
Oh, so far I'd have to say it was the Cowgirl Hall of Fame buckle
Yeah.
that I did, because it's got a different shape to it. I made different dye for it, and it took me some time, Bob and I, some time to figure out the dye and get it pressed so it's just right. There are some challenges with the soldering. I always like a challenge, not necessarily with soldering, but there are challenges with the soldering. But I love this shape and I love this die. And one of the buckles that I'll be experimenting with this summer that I'm anxious to, one of my projects, is going to be working with this same die. It's just a little bit different than what you see on other belt buckles.
Do you reserve dies for like special projects, or is it more like when the feeling hits, you're like, yeah, I want to pull that one back out?
Both. I will reuse them, but often I remake them or I tweak them. I don't do steel dies. I use plastics, whether I use it as a female form or a male form. I'm able to play more than if I was having to EDM out a steel die, or actually I have hand filed steel dies, which is quite a process, but you do what you have to do.
You do it.
Yeah, but this other way allows me to, if I don't really like the die, I maybe only have a half a day into it and very little money. So it's easy to tweak your die, start a new one, adjust it in other ways, but it also allows you a lot of freedom in whatever shape you want to do. If you make your own dies, you're not stuck with, well, I have to make these two types of buckles because that's all the dies I have. So you customer have to choose A or B rather than let's come up with something new.
What has been the hardest lesson for you to learn as a maker?
That I'm not a whiz at silver soldering, and I still get a lot of fire scale. In a perfect world, when I die and gonna go to heaven, there'll
be no fire
scale. Thank goodness.
Fire scale even.
Thank goodness for micromotors and all those polishing tips. They have helped. They've made my life a lot easier. I would like to be a more professionally trained silversmith in that regard, knowing my solders better, my techniques better, and having real time to study that would be fun.
Where have you picked up the skills that you have in that regards?
Trial and error. And so I know I have gaps. Obviously, I have to have gaps. I would love to live in a community where there might be a community college that had a metals course. Because even just if you're working with other metals, you're going to learn techniques that you can carry over into silver. Not exactly the same, maybe, but the same thing. And what a joy it would be to be able to take a class from a community college that had a jewelry program or a metals program. Then you focus on that time and that's all you do, which is, as you know, as well as I do, it's very rare you get a half a day where you don't have interruptions. And
speak to that too, because you're a mother, you're a rancher, like you have your cabins. Has that been really hard for you to navigate as you were coming up in the engraving world? How did you divide your time? And it's hard.
Yes, it is hard, especially since I'm a real loner type person and I want to just be left alone.
Homebody. We call that the homebody. Was there ever a project where Bob came in and is like, Diane, you have to take a break?
Oh, yes. Yes. Usually by the end of the day. He's saying, it is 5 o'clock. And I don't want to quit. I'm at a spot where I'm on a roll and I don't want to quit. And often I don't, but, sooner or later I do have to call it a day.
Time goes so much faster than you expect it to, and things always take longer than you expect it to. And so,
I think Sam calls it engraving time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard him say that, but
and it's 3 hours.
3 hours later.
Yeah. It is such a solitary art. And I'm sure other arts are the same way because you are hyper-focused on what you're doing. And so other people can't really share this time with you or enjoy it as you are because they're not doing it.
I would disagree with that because I can walk into the classroom and just watch you guys engrave up on the monitor. I'm perfectly happy doing that. So
Maybe if I put a monitor in my studio and then Bob could watch it.
there you
Then he
go.
could
Yes.
enjoy it with me. Yeah. Yeah.
Kenny will come in every once in a while and just kind of stare over my shoulder and I'm like, do you need something? I'm
Yes.
just watching.
Yeah.
And that too, it's like your own worst critic, and somebody will come along and be like, "Oh, that's beautiful," and you're like, but
Yeah.
this, you know,
I find myself, I engrave for other engravers.
mm, mm-hmm.
I think, another engraver's gonna look at this.
I
You know,
completely understand
what are
that.
they gonna see? So every time I do something, I always think you do have to call it project to project, but I think, what would I
Mm-hmm.
do differently the next time? What
Mm-hmm.
would I change? Did I have enough leaf area covered here? Did I have enough negative area over there? Did I shade that correctly? Is that a funny little loop or something? I'm very picky with my work that way. I take a lot of pictures and
That's what
then
I was gonna
I
ask.
go back and review.
Do you have lots of notebooks for specific projects or specific skills that you go back to frequently?
I do it the old-fashioned way. I copy it off, and I have a box about this big. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
can see that, a big box, and it is up to the top with
The
my
pictures.
pictures and ideas. And
Yeah.
Bob just looks at me because I pack this box everywhere. I'm never without my box because
Mm.
it is my idea thing. And I don't know, it's my comfort. I love going through it. Oh, just, anyway.
I love that. I love that. What got you into teaching, Diane? How did that evolve?
I was at the Firearms Engravers Guild. This is going to date me. It was back in the Silver Legacy. I had started doing a few firearms engraving,
Okay.
but to show at the Firearms Engravers Guild, you had to have guns on your table. So I had done a few, and it was, I'd been doing it a couple of years. And when I set up my table and I would put my rifles and my guns out, and then once all the tables were judged and the show opened, then I would slip out my belt buckles and bits and spurs and put them on the
Yes.
table. And people seemed to really enjoy those. Well, that year, Dawn and DJ and Kim were at Vega. They had a table there and they had the microscope set up, and I had been thinking about a microscope. And Bob's saying, you ought to go sit down and try that microscope. And no, no. And it's on a camera on a big screen TV, and I was too shy. And finally, towards the end of the show, he said, I'm not buying you a microscope until you try it out, because we don't know if you're going to like it.
You don't like it or not.
So, okay. So I went over there, and every time I came around with my graver, I had a bracelet on. And the bracelet would flash up on the big screen. And Don was watching this, and he came over when I got done, and he asked me about my bracelet and who did it, and I told him I did. I hate to say I was surprised, but I think he was not expecting me to say that I had done it. About 30 minutes later, DJ and Kim came to the table and visited and chatted and looked at my work. And then when the show was over, they came over and said, we would like to have you teach for us. Would you be interested? And honestly, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was really important to share that this was the opportunity for others not to have to struggle like I did. I couldn't say, I had to say yes, because it was going to die bright cutting if we didn't share it and teach it and pass it on. So I said yes. And then thank heavens for Manny Gonzalez, who took me under his wing. He helped me put together a syllabus. He helped me put together some tutorial sheets. Back then, I had a rubber stamp made for a scroll because that's what he did. So he said, have these made, and then you can stamp your plates in class. And it got me going. And of course, everyone at GRS was so helpful and encouraging. Anytime I needed a resource, it was available, or they would help me figure it out. And it's been such a rewarding part of my life. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and it has built my skills just in being around so many other engravers. On a regular basis, I never see another engraver. So I really look forward to getting together with the other instructors and sharing, and just the whole community has been so rewarding.
You're making me tear up a little bit, Diane.
Oh man, I love it.
That is so cool. And yes, I've heard some stories like how the training center used to be and how it was upstairs and then it was at a different location. So like hearing you say that you used to have the rubber stamp that you would stamp your plates with, and it's just like so crazy to hear those stories. I love it. If you hadn't gone down this path of silversmithing and engraving, what do you think you would be doing?
I'd be an accountant.
You know what? I think I remember asking you this before. It doesn't sound crazy. I love numbers too.
Numbers are right or wrong, and I have a comfort in that. That's one thing why I'm not comfortable with my Bellino and some of that in the engraving world, because it's not always, well, it's often wrong, but I don't always know when I get it exactly right. You know,
there's not structured rules.
Right. It's like English is compared to math. You know, math is right or wrong. I like knowing I'm right or wrong and how to get there.
I think you would kind of come up with your own set of rules as you get more into it, though, you know?
I think, yes, and you got to know how to break those rules. And that's important too. Another thing I like about the idea of being an accountant is I want an office at the end of the hall with a door on it.
That locks?
And then don't bother me. Let me do my work. Actually, if I had an engraving studio at the end of the hall where I could lock the door, it would just make sure I get coffee. I'd be happy.
She loves you, Bob. She still loves you, Bob. She just needs her silence.
I do. I could not do this without him. I'll tell you, a supportive spouse. If you're married and your spouse, if they support you, it's huge.
Go try that microscope, Diane.
That was wonderful.
Good job, Bob. All right, I have one more question for you that I haven't asked yet, and that would be, with the student reviews, is there a particular review that has stuck with you over the years?
I really, truly, I want everyone to leave having a grasp of what they came to learn. And I don't expect them to be a good bright cutter when they leave, but I expect them to know how to bright cut and how to get practice to be that good bright cutter. And that's my responsibility, that somehow I have presented it in a way that makes sense to them, and that when they leave, they have what they need to move on.
I think that's what I love most about the training center, and what keeps me drawn to it and why I get emotional and teary about it is because there is so much passion behind all of the instructors and behind the people that work there. Like, they want the students to succeed, and it's so evident, you know?
That's what's really special about GRS, is they truly want these people to succeed. They love the art. It is utmost that the student have a wonderful experience and that they learn and that they go away excited to do more.
Thank you for spending time with us this morning. We hope you stay tuned for the newest episode of The Angle with our next instructor.